So you're thinking of starting a carnivore diet and you want to make sure you get the best results possible. That's what I'm going to talk about today is the what I consider one of two options to be the right way to start. And it's going to depend on you. Almost everything in the low carb world, the answer is it depends. I already made a video on that. If I knew how to put a card up here, I would link it. But anyway, you just have to search it. When you're thinking about, say, going swimming, and even if you've been in the pool multiple times, you don't really know what the current temperature is. So most people either, stick their toes in and test the water, or they go to the deep end, they dive in head first, or they do a cannonball. So there's a quick entry and a slow entry. Both of those are probably the right way to start carnivore. But let me give you a little bit of nuance in that. And I credit one of the ladies in the Carnivore Without the Crazy school community, which I started up maybe 2 weeks ago. We had our first live call yesterday. And I brought this topic up, and she gave me the second option, which is kind of how I started it. I pretty much went cold turkey on carbs and just started eating steak and hamburger, which can often lead to a thing called the keto flu, even though it's not a virus and it's not a flu. The reason it's called keto flu is you get a lot of flu-like, air quote, symptoms, which include fatigue, nausea, diarrhea, general lack of energy, which, yes, I call fatigue. Your get up and go kind of feels like it got up and went the first 3 days. And there's a reason for that. You are transitioning your body from burning carbohydrates and or blood sugar for energy over to burning an alternate source of energy called ketones, which may actually be the natural state of our bodies before processed food was processed. When we had real food, I think most of us were in ketosis most of the day. That's a whole nother story, whether we should be in it permanently all the time or not. But anyway, there are ways to reduce the effects or reduce the chance of getting the keto flu. And that was my main topic I wanted to discuss today. Like I said, the keto flu, you feel like you have the flu and you're thinking, well, I did this to be healthy. Why do I feel like crap? And you might for 2 or 3 days. That's not uncommon. In fact, it's very natural and normal if you do it option one, which is cold turkey. I want to tell you about another option where you could actually prevent or limit the effects of the keto flu. And that's by kind of using the toe in the water method, let's call it that, where you don't jump in all at once. More of a slow transition. The average person in the United States is eating about 300 grams of carbohydrates a day. If you're going carnivore or low carb, we can talk about low carb, you're going to be at least at the maximum 120 carbs per day. If you really go carnivore, you're going to be closer to 20 carbs per day because there are carblets and other things. You'll still eat some salad maybe or lettuce or onions or something that have minimal carbs in them. So instead of going from 300 carbs a day, totally blood sugar dependent, and you notice I'm saying blood sugar, not nutritional sugar, because there is actually a difference, and that's a whole nother video also. But for today, when I say sugar, I'm not talking about table sugar. I'm talking about glucose, which is what's in your bloodstream, and in your muscles and other cells, which is giving you your energy to run your body if you are eating a standard Western diet or standard diet anywhere, I'm sure, is full of carbohydrates. And 300 grams is probably 2 to 3 times what the recommended daily allowance is in the food pyramid. And I hate to even bring that up because I don't like the food pyramid. There's no real science behind it. But even if you're going with the crappy advice from the government, you don't want to be consuming 300 grams of carbs per day. So maybe cut out 100 the first day or the first week. And it always depends on what your goal is and how your body reacts. Maybe the simplest way is to cut out 100 carbs and until you get used to not having those 100. So you're at 200 carbs a day now. That's not going to create a whole lot of weight loss. It's not going to create a whole lot of better feeling or healing in your body, but it's a short-term pain for a long-term gain because if you dive right in and you get the keto flu, you may jump right out and go back to your way of eating, and your body composition that you're at now will never change unless you are like the lady on the call who said, I had this pain in my face and I knew I'd studied keto, I'd studied carnivore, and I knew I would not have the energy for a few days, but it was worth it to not have the pain. And it's some long title of a, I don't want to call it a disease, a ailment that you get that creates and women tend to get it much more often than men. So anyway, she kind of set me straight on that, which I was grateful for because you may be the kind of person that has enough willpower to deal with, or let me call it, because willpower really doesn't work. So I don't want to give you a false hook there, but you may have the determination that the long-term goal is worth the short-term pain. And if you are, jump right in and fight the keto flu, overcome it, and then get moving on to your goal. If you don't want to suffer that much, then go option 2, which would be starting low carb by gradually reducing your carbs and gradually increasing your fat. And that also gives your bile time to adjust, which is a lot of the reason people get, as Joe Rogan called it, disaster pants, or as others call it, exploding diarrhea, because you can only digest as much consumed fat as your body can make bile. And if you've been on a very low fat diet, then your bile production is reduced to accommodate your normal. So if you go throwing 50% of your calories from fat on the next day after you say, oh my gosh, carnivore is the best thing since sliced bread, I'm going to jump right in. Then you don't have the capacity at that point to produce enough bile to actually absorb all that fat. So got to go somewhere. So it goes right out the other end in a ooey gooey exploding mess, which is a symptom of the keto flu, or any flu for that matter. And again, the keto flu is not actually a virus or a disease. It's a symptom of your body not liking the change you're giving to it. So if you want to make your body happy and have the least amount of discomfort, that might be the best word, discomfort, while you transition to a carnivore, keto, lion, low carb, whatever. And I said 120 because that's what a lot of the random control trials that are testing or observing or trying to figure out low carb, that's the limit they use on their participants or guinea pigs or whatever the word. I don't mean the real guinea pigs. I mean the lab rats that you become in these random controlled trials, because you don't know if you're in the control group or if you're in the test group. So you may do one of these trials as a participant and not see any gain. Well, that probably means you're in the control group, or their hypothesis was very, very wrong. Because the point of a random controlled trial is to prove or disprove the hypothesis that ran the study or the reason they did the study. So, what are the two options? There's jumping right in and risking the keto flu and being man or woman enough to push through it for 3 days. Because generally, cravings will only survive for 3 days. So, if you if you go to strict meat only or meat and things that came from animals, then after 3 days, you're going to crave the other stuff a lot less. And it's partly to do because your microbiome is changing with every meal, and you're starving the ones that want the sugar, and you're feeding the ones that can handle the amino acids and fat. And that's what causes your craving when those microbiome, the bacteria down there, isn't getting fed what it likes to eat. So it screams and hollers for you to feed me sugar, feed me sugar. But it's kind of like the gremlins. After dark, you don't want to feed them. Or, yeah, what was that? Sunset, after dark. But anyway, once they get grumpy, you don't want to feed them, and then the cravings go away. As Dr. Eric Westman says, you crave what you eat. And that kind of lines up with the microbiome theory that when you don't feed certain bacteria in your gut, and you've got maybe 10 million of them, that they're going to scream, "Oh, feed me, feed me, feed me," like you would scream if you didn't get fed for 2 or 3 days. Dr. Lustig actually says if you don't feed your microbiome, they will feed off of you, which may be true, but there's truth and then there's a problem. It's probably the truth. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Lustig and his research and what he says. But is that dying bacteria that like sugar eating a little bit of your glycocalyx really a problem? No, your glycocalyx replaces itself very quickly if it's not badly damaged. And that's a whole nother video too about how sugar is kind of like sand in your arteries and probably your digestive tract, which is where the glycocalyx is. That's the thin layer on the inside of your cell wall in your abdominal linings. Another tip to help prevent relapse is to get rid of all your trigger foods. And this lady also, we mentioned that on the call yesterday, and the lady also brought up, well, if you have a husband, a son, a family member, a friend, a roommate, whatever, that's difficult to get rid of everything in the house. So I thought, well, yes, you're right. They may not be eating the same way of eating you're trying, but you really need support. And let me do a plug here for the community on the school platform, SKOOL. And there should be a link in the bio. I mean, not link in the description. Link in bio is Instagram. There's also a link there if you're on my Instagram. But there's a link in the description for the school community called Carnivore Without the Crazy. And yes, this is where I got a lot of the ideas from this video. It helped me fill it out a little more. But I told her, I said, true, there may be other people in your home that are not eating the same way as you. So treat them like a roommate. When I live in people's homes, they give me a section of the cabinet, a section of the refrigerator for my food, and they generally don't touch it. So put your food in a certain cabinet on a certain shelf in the refrigerator, and think of everything else in the house as your roommate's foods, and it's off limits. So that's one way to prevent relapse when those microbiomes are screaming, gimme, 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 because it's a whole lot harder to get dressed or get your shoes on or find your wallet and your key, get in the car, drive to the grocery store, look for whatever it is you're craving. And I try not to say too many trigger foods in these videos, but you know what I'm talking about. Something. So if you have to actually go get it, that's enough friction that you generally don't go get it. Therefore, you can stay on better and not risk a relapse to where you could trigger a keto flu-like response again as you go to get off those things. So either jump in cold turkey or go slow. There's not really a right or wrong answer. Just that you're doing it is the right answer. And with that, I'm going to end and say, I hope I'll see you in the, I don't like to call it I'm the owner of it, but it's our group, whoever joins it, in the group on the school platform, Carnivore Without the Crazy. Again, the link is in the show notes or description down below, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.